so that'll be pretty secure. Wireless networks should also be secure, so AirBears is not secure. Anybody can see what you set up with AirBears. Yeah. But if you log into probably your home network or something like that, that might be encrypted. So just make sure that you know what you're connecting to.
So that means for password authentication, you want to use HTTPS. But if you're on the same site after you log in, you don't have to use HTTPS.
No, you do still have to use HTTPS.
You got to use it for the whole session.
Yeah, it's the cookies that are sent back and forth. I don't know if you guys have heard, there's this new Firefox plugin called FireSheep, which makes it really easy for anyone who has this plugin to, like, it kind of like, if you're sitting on, for example, like, if me and Alan are sitting on, like, AirBears, and he's, like, going on Facebook, and I have this, like, Firefox plugin that just, like, captures his cookies that he's sending over the network, I can actually log in as him on Facebook and, like, do anything on Facebook that I want as Alan. So, like, it's pretty serious, like, so anytime that you visit a website that like has some kind of persistent state, like it knows when you're logged in, like across pages, like it's sending some kind of cookie. So unless you're on like an HTTPS, which means it's like sending it secure, which means encrypted, or you're on some like encrypted network that is not AirBears because AirBears is not encrypted, like anyone can like steal your cookies and like log in as you.
So just be careful what you're logging into. Facebook's probably the most notorious because they're like the biggest website without HTTPS. Yeah. Like they log in with HTTPS, but once you go there, everything else is HTTP, which doesn't make any difference. So it just means that people can't steal your password. That doesn't mean that they can't steal your cookie, which is almost as important as your password.
Yeah, because if you have the cookie, you can log in.
Yeah, if you have the cookie, the website makes no difference as to whether you are that person or you are some other computer with that cookie.
Yeah, so like what what your browser does, like without you knowing it, is it has this cookie that is stored, like that Facebook sent you at the beginning when you logged in, and every time you visit Facebook, it sends back that cookie. So if you have a stolen cookie from someone else's like session, you can construct like this like fake like HTTP request, like and you insert that cookie, and it looks like from Facebook's point of view that you're signing in as the other person.
How hard is it to do that?
It's really easy with FireSheep, especially. It's like people just click a button and then like you can log in as a
Yeah, use a plugin called HTTPS, which gives you HTTPS encryption everywhere.
Is there any reason why you think Facebook hasn't implemented HTTPS? It's slower or something?
It is slower. It costs
a lot. It costs a lot. You need to get a certificate, which
not that. It's the data encryption.
It's more overdone.
You have to, so like the way the HTTP works is it's encrypted, right? So it just means that on their servers, they have to do a lot more calculations, and if they have like billions of visits a day, their cost could go up a lot in terms of just the amount of hardware that they need or the people that they can service at a time. So
you have to remember that everything, like when you go on Facebook, it's not just one request to a server and that's it. It's when you go on Facebook, there's actually like 3 or 4 requests going on at once.
And like HTTPS is, if you're on like an HTTPS site, like everything is sent encrypted. So even photos and things that don't really matter if they're secure or not are sent encrypted. So I mean, Facebook has so many photos. They have even movies and things. Like all that would have to be encrypted. So there's just huge overhead. Yeah.
And here are some other concerns that you have to worry about. When you work with databases, there are a lot of security problems. And I'm not going to go too deep into these issues, but you should know about these, that things can go wrong when you use databases. Number 1 is security. There are things called SQL injection attacks that if you don't actually make sure your SQL statements are properly sanitized, which means that people can't trick your SQL statement into actually doing something else. If you don't make sure that your SQL statements are properly sanitized, they can do whatever they want in your database. So they can actually delete everything in your database or something like that, or change someone else's password and steal their account or something. Most websites nowadays don't have this problem. This is probably a solved problem, but just be sure that that sometimes you have to worry about that, especially with PHP. PHP is pretty notorious about with SQL injection attacks. You have to take care of them yourself. If you want to know more about that, you can talk to me. And encryption. Most people think that encryption is like some really difficult thing that they have to worry about. Actually, it's very easy with PHP. when you store people's passwords in databases, you should not store them as their password, literally. You should store them as some encrypted one-way encryption. So what people do is when you type in your password and then you send it, when you register for websites and you give them your password, they encrypt it and store that encrypted data into their database. And then whenever you log in, they take the password that you give them, they encrypt it, and they compare the two. They never compare your two plain text passwords together. So that's how the encryption is done. Validity is really annoying when you work with databases, but basically you have to worry about whatever's being into your database is nice and fits well with your database. So for example, you don't get numbers you don't get words in fields that like your age or something like that. So you have to make sure that this is really annoying, and when you work with databases, you have to worry about it. So you have this giant block of validation where you have to say, make sure that this is all numbers, this is all letters.
Do you do the validation in PHP before it goes into the SQL?
Yeah, you usually do validation in PHP. SQL is not so good for validation. And scalability. This is a problem that you'll come across if you have billions of users on your website, like Facebook. The lab you'll be doing today, there's probably going to be 1 or 2 people ever to go on that your website. So scalability is not so much of a problem. When you make a business that millions of people are visiting your website at once, your database is actually the slowest thing. So when you make a query from PHP to MySQL, your database, one request per second is probably not so bad. 100 requests per second is not so bad. But once it gets to millions of requests per second from a single database, you get huge problems. And then you have to split your database into pieces and things like that. So your database is probably the most important, the slowest thing on your web server once you get to getting into a lot of people. Are there any questions about these 3 subjects?
So how do you increase its speed?
How do you increase speed? That's a really good question that have lots of PhD papers on. What they're doing right now is you make a lot of databases. So what they do is they say on the back end, instead of just one database you're querying, you actually query multiple databases, and if one of them responds, you use that. So you actually replicate your data across multiple different servers. So your database is in like 7 different places. But then you also have a problem with that. Sometimes one database might have one version of your data if it changed, and then the other 6 don't have the updated version. And then you have to make sure that they have stay the same. So there's a lot of Any other questions?
Is that what Google does?
Yes, Google is very good at doing this. They are very good at scalability. That is their key selling point. Any other questions? Okay, so that's it. So you guys are going to be working on a lab for today, and what you're going to be working on is something called you're going to be working on Twitter. It's basically a clone of Twitter that you can let me just show you that.
It's kind of like what you guys did for a previous lab. Remember when you guys had that friend that like talked to this backend service, or like you posted tweets or whatever, and then now you're gonna implement like a simplistic model with what the backend looks like.
This is a really simplistic model of what Twitter would be. For example, if I said okay, and then if I hit add, it should be able to add my thought to this database. Okay, and so this is one database form. This is your form that inserts something into your database. So you're going to be doing these 2 things in your lab, and you're going to be mostly filling in PHP code, a couple lines of HTML, but mostly PHP. We don't actually have MySQL databases for you guys today, so what you're going to have to do is, once you finish your code and you think it's right, just call us over and we'll check you out and give you tips on what you can do to make the code